is doing good today. This ain't too bad. Give me 1 second, everyone. Put something on so it's not so quiet. Let's put some more Lovecraft on.
Chariots might pass each other as men drove them along the top. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information, or to volunteer, please visit LupaVox.org. Recording by Matt Bonehoff. The Doom That Came to Sarnath by H.P. Lovecraft. There is, in the land of Manar, a vast, still lake that is fed by no stream, and out of which no stream flows. 10,000 years ago, there stood by its shore the mighty city of Sarnath, but Sarnath stands there no more. It is told that in the immemorial years, when the world was young, before ever the men of Sarnath came to the land of Manar, another city stood beside the lake, the grey stone city of Id, which was as old as the lake itself, and peopled by beings not pleasing to behold. Very odd and ugly were these beings, as indeed are most beings of the world, yet inchoate and rudely fashioned. It is written on the brick cylinders of Cleodatharon that the beings of Ib were in hue as green as the lake and the mists that rise above it, that they had bulging eyes, pouting, flabby lips, and furious ears, and were without voice. It is also written that they descended one night from the moon in a mist, they and the vast, still lake and the grey stone city Ib. However this may be, it is certain that they worshipped a sea-green stone idol chiseled in the likeness of Bakra, the great water lizard, before which they danced horribly when the moon gives. And it is written in the papyrus of Ilarnek that one day they discovered fire, and thereafter kindled flames on many ceremonial occasions. But not much is written of these beings, because they lived in very ancient times, and man is young and knows but little of the very ancient living things. After many eons, men came to the land of Manar, dark shepherd folk, their fleecy flocks, who built Thra, Ilarnek, and Cleodatharon on the winding river Eye. And certain tribes, more hardy than the rest, pushed on to the border of the lake and built Sarnath, at a spot where precious metals were found in the earth. Not far from the grey city of Id did the wandering tribes lay the first stones of Sarnath, and at the beings of Id they marveled greatly. But with their marveling was mixed hate, for they thought it not meet that beings of such aspect should walk about the world of men at dusk, nor did they like the strange sculptures on the grey monoliths of Id. For why those sculptures lingered so late in the world, even until the coming of men, none can tell, unless it is because the land of Manar is very still and remote from most other lands, both of waking and of dreaming. As the men of Sarnath beheld more of the beings of Id, their hate grew, and it was not less because they found the beings weak and soft as jelly to the touch of stones and arrows. So one day, the young warriors, the slingers and the spearmen and the bowmen, marched against Id, and slew all the inhabitants thereof, pushing the queer bodies into the lake with long spears, because they did not wish to touch them. And because they did not like the grey sculptured monoliths of Id, they cast these also into the lake, wondering from the greatness of the labor, however the stones were brought from afar, as they must have been, since there is not like them in the land of Manar or the lands adjacent. Thus, of the very ancient city of Id, nothing was spared, save the sea-green stone idol chiseled in the likeness of Bakra, the water lizard. This the young warriors took back with them as a symbol of conquest over the old gods and beings and as a sign of leadership in Manar. The weird lights were seen over the lake, and in the morning the people found the idol gone, and the high priest, Turan-Ish, lying dead, as from some fear unspeakable. And before he died, Turan-Ish had scrawled upon the altar of chrysolite, in coarse, shaky strokes, the sign of doom. After Turan-Ish, there were many high priests in Sarnath, but never was the sea-green stone idol found, and many centuries came and went, wherein Sarnath prospered exceedingly, so that only priests and old women remembered what Turan-Ish had scrawled upon the altar of chrysolite. Betwixt Sarnath and the city of Ilarnec arose a caravan route, and the precious metals from the earth were exchanged for other metals and rare cloths, and jewels, and books, and tools for artificers, and all things of luxury that are known to the people who travel along the winding river Ai and beyond. So Sarnath waxed mighty, and learned, and beautiful, and sent forth conquering armies to subdue the neighboring cities. And in time there sat upon a throne in Sarnath the kings of all the land of Manar, and of many lands adjacent. The wonder of the world and the pride of all mankind was Sarnath the Magnificent. Of polished desert-quarried marble were its walls, in height 300 cubits, and in breadth 75, so that chariots might pass each other as men drove them along the top. For full 500 stadia did they run, being open only on the side toward the lake, where a green stone seawall kept back the waves that rose oddly once a year at the festival of the Destroyer. In Sarnath were 50 streets, from the lake to the gates of the caravans, and 50 more intersecting them, with onyx where they paved, save those whereupon the horses and camels and elephants trod, which were paved with granite. And the gates of Sarnath were as many as the landward ends of the streets, each of bronze, and flanked by the figures of lions and elephants, carven from some stone no longer known among men. The houses of Sarnath were of glazed brick and chalcedony, each having its walled garden and crystal lakelet. With strange art were they builded, for no other city had houses like them, and travelers from Thra and Ilarnec and Kedatharon marveled at the shining domes wherewith they were surmounted. But more marvelous still were the palaces and the temples and the gardens made by Zokar the Olden King. There were many palaces, the last of which were mightier than any in Thra or Ilarnec or Kedatharon. So high were they that one within might sometimes fancy himself beneath only the sky. Yet, when lighted with torches dipped in the oil of Dilthir, their walls showed vast paintings of kings and armies, a splendor at once inspiring and stupefying to the beholder. Many were the pillars of the palaces, all of tinted marble, and carved into designs of surpassing beauty. And in most of the palaces the floors were mosaics of beryl and lapis lazuli, and sardonyx and carbuncle and other choice materials, so disposed that the beholder might fancy himself walking over beds of the rarest flowers. And there were likewise fountains, which cast scented waters about in pleasing jets arranged with cunning art, outshining
Hey,
all
Booger,
others
how you doing,
of
bro?
the kings of Manar and of the lands
Thanks for stopping by.
on a pair of golden crouching lions.
Yeah, I'm at my mom and aunt's again. I'm house sitting and dog sitting.
It was wrought
Watch, I'll get the dog I'm watching.
though no man lives who knows whence so vast a peace could have come. In that palace there were also many galleries and many amphitheaters where lions and men and elephants battled at the pleasure of the kings. Sometimes the amphitheaters were flooded with water conveyed from the lake in mighty aqueducts, and then were enacted stirring sea fights, or combats betwixt swimmers and deadly marine things. Lofty and amazing were the 17 tower-like temples of Sarnath, fashioned of a bright multicolored stone not known elsewhere. A full 1,000 cubits high stood the greatest among
Thanks,
them,
Booger.
wherein the high priests
Yeah,
dwelt,
it's a she.
the magnificence scarce less than that of the kings.
She's a little hyper one sometimes, too.
As those of the palaces, where gathered throngs in worship of Zokalar and Tamash and Loban, the chief gods of Sarnath, whose incense enveloped shrines were as the thrones of monarchs. Not like the icons of other gods were those of Zokalar and Tamash and Loban.
But right now,
Life were they,
this is
that one
pretty much what I'm
might swear
smoking.
graceful bearded gods
Some
themselves
resin.
sat on the ivory thrones. And up unending steps of Zircon was the tower chamber, wherefrom the high priests looked out over the city and the plains.
I think so.
And at the cryptic moon and significant stars and planets, and their reflections in the lake at night. Here was done a very secret and ancient rite in detestation of Bakrug the water lizard, and here rested the altar of chrysolite, which bore the doomed scrawl of Turan Ish. Wonderful likewise were the gardens made by Zophar the Olden King. In the center of Sarnath,
Any what, dog or chihuahuas for sale? No.
By a high wall, and they were surmounted by a mighty dome of glass, through which shone the
But we
sun
might have
and
some with
planets when it was
my
lit,
brother's dog,
from
because
which were hung
he's going to breed him with another dog of the same breed.
and stars and planets
And
when it was
we're going
not
to get some
lit.
puppies.
In summer, the gardens were cool.
But my brother's
fresh
dog
breezes wafted
is
by
part
fairies.
Chihuahua and part
And
Shih
in
Tzu.
winter, they were heated with concealed fires, so that in those gardens
I'll have to check it out,
always
Booger.
there ran little streams over bright pebbles, dividing meads of green in gardens of many hues, and spanned by a multitude of bridges. Many were the waterfalls in their courses, and many were the huge lakelets into which they expanded. Over the streams and lakelets rode white swans, whilst the music of rare birds chimed in with the melody of the waters. In ordered terraces rose the green banks, adorned here and there with bowers of vines and sweet blossoms, and seats and benches of marble and porphyry. And there were many small shrines and temples where one might rest.
I'll have to check it out after I do my live, Booger.
Each year there was celebrated in Sarnath the feast of the destroying of Id, at which time wine, song, dancing, and merriment of every kind abounded. Great honors were laid to the shades of those who had annihilated the odd ancient beings, and the memory of those beings and of their elder gods was derided by dancers and flutinists crowned with roses from the garden. And they cast out into the lake and cursed the boat. At first,
Hell yeah, Booger.
liked not the
You have a good one.
for there had descended among them queer tales of how the sea green icon had vanished, and how Turan Ish had died from fear and left a warning. And they said that from their high tower they sometimes saw lights beneath the waters of the lake. But as many years passed without calamity, even the priests laughed and cursed and joined in the orgies of the feasters. Indeed, had they not themselves in their high tower often performed the very ancient and secret rite in detestation of Bakrug the water lizard? And 1,000 years of riches and delight passed over Sarnath, wonder of the world. Gorgeous beyond thought was the feast.
Give me 1 second, everyone.
Destroying of Ib. For a decade had it been occupied in the land of Manar, and as it drew nigh, there came to Sarnath on horses and camels and elephants, men from Thra, Ilarnech, and Gadatharon, and all the cities of Manar and the lands beyond. Before the marble walls on the appointed night were pitched the pavilions of princes and the tents of travelers. Within his banquet hall reclined Nargis High, the king, drunken with ancient wine from the vaults of conquered Knaf, and surrounded by feasting nobles and hurrying slaves. There were eaten many strange delicacies that feast, peacocks from the distant hills of Linfland, heels of camels from the Benazik desert, nuts and spices from Sindathri in the groves, and pearls from wave-washed metal dissolved
I
in
had
the
to scrape
vinegar
this
of
because
fog.
all that.
Of sauces, there were
That shit
an
right
untold
there.
number, prepared by the subtlest cooks in all Manar,
Just wait.
suited to the palate of every feaster.
Because
But
all
most
that,
prized of
all the way up is all
the
fucking resin.
great fishes from the lake, each of vast size, and served upon golden platters set with rubies and diamonds. Whilst the king and his nobles feasted within the palace and viewed the crowning dish as it awaited
So when I
them
cough, I got this.
others
Nice and handy.
elsewhere. In the tower of the great temple, the priests held revels, and in pavilions without the walls, the princes of neighboring lands made merry. And it was the high priest Genai Ka who first saw the shadows that descended from the gibbous moon into the lake, and the damnable green mists that arose from the lake beneath the moon, and the shrouds of monster haze the towers and the domes of fated Sarnath. Thereafter, those in the towers and without the walls beheld strange lights on the water, and saw that the gray rock Akurion, which was wont to rear high above it near the shore, was almost submerged. And fear grew vaguely yet swiftly, so that the princes of Alarnec and of Bar Rockhold took down and
How's everyone's Friday been so far?
departed, though they scarce knew the reason for their departing. Then, close to the hour of midnight, all the bronze gates of Sarnath burst open and emptied forth a frenzied throng that blackened the plain, so that all the visiting princes and travelers fled away in fright. For on the faces of this throng was written madness born of horror unendurable, and on their tongues were words so terrible that no hearer paused for proof. Men whose eyes were wild with fear shrieked aloud at the sight within the king's banquet hall, where through the windows were seen no longer the forms of Nargis High and his nobles and slaves, but a horde of indescribable green voiceless things with bulging eyes, pouting flabby lips and curious ears, things which danced horribly, bearing in their paws golden plates set with rubies and diamonds and containing uncouth flames. And the princes and travelers, as they fled from the doomed city of Sarnath on horses and camels and elephants, looked back again upon the mist-beginning lake and saw the grey rock Kurion was quite submerged. Through all the land of Manar and the land adjacent spread the tales of those who had fled from Sarnath, and caravans sought that accursed city and its precious metals no more. It was long ere any travelled went thither, and even then only the brave and adventurous young men of yellow hair and blue eyes, who were no kin to the men of Manar. These men indeed went to the lake to view Sarnath, but though they found the vast still lake itself, and the grey rock Akurion which rears high above it near the shore, they beheld not the wonder of the world and the pride of all mankind. Where once had risen walls of 300 cubits and towers yet higher, now stretched only the marshy shore. Where once had dwelt 50 million men, now crawled the detestable water lizard. Not even the mines of precious metal remained. Doom had come to Sarnath. Half buried in the was spied a curious green idol, an exceedingly ancient idol, chiseled in the likeness of Bakrug, the great water lizard. That idol, enshrined in the high temple at Alarnec, was subsequently worshipped.
Definitely hope everyone's having a good and safe Friday. Well, not Friday. Is it Friday? Oh, yeah. Hope everyone's having a good Friday night and safe one.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by James Pontolillo. Ex Oblivione by H.P. Lovecraft. When the last days were upon me, and the ugly trifles of existence began to drive me to madness like the small drops of water that torturers let fall ceaselessly upon one spot of their victim's body, I loved the irradiant refuge of sleep. In my dreams, I found a little of the beauty I had vainly sought in life, and wandered through old gardens and enchanted woods. Once, when the wind was soft and scented, I heard the lark calling, and sailed endlessly and languorously under strange stars. Once, when the gentle rain fell, I glided in a barge down a sunless stream under the earth, till I reached another world of purple twilight, iridescent arbors, and undying roses. And once I walked through a golden valley that led to shadowy groves and ruins, and ended in a mighty wall green with antique vines, and pierced by a little gate of bronze. Many times I walked through that valley, and longer would I pause in the spectral half-light where the giant trees squirmed and twisted grotesquely, and the gray ground stretched damply from trunk to trunk, sometimes disclosing the mold-stained stones of buried temples. And always the goal of my fancies was the mighty vine-grown wall, with the little gate of bronze therein. After a while, as the days of waking became less and less bearable from their grayness and sameness, I would often drift in opiate peace through the valley and the shadowy groves, and wonder how I might seize them for my eternal dwelling place, so that I need no more crawl back to a dull world stripped of interest and new colors. And as I looked upon the little gate in the mighty wall, I felt that beyond it lay a dream country from which, once it was entered, there would be no return. So each night in sleep I strove to find the hidden latch of the gate in the ivied antique wall, though it was exceedingly well hidden. And I would tell myself that the realm beyond the wall was not more lasting merely, but more lovely and radiant as well. Then, one night in the dream city of Zakarian, I found a yellow papyrus filled with the thoughts of dream sages who dwelt
Hey,
in
Mix, how you
that
doing,
city,
bro?
and who were too wise ever to be born in the waking world. Therein were written many things concerning the world of dream, and among them was
Just
the
over here,
Golden Valley,
house
a stately
sitting
grove with temples,
and
a
animal
high
sitting,
wall pierced
pretty
by
much.
a little bronze gate. When I saw this lore, I knew that it touched on the scenes I had haunted, and I therefore read long in the yellow papyrus.
But I don't mind it.
Some of the dream sages wrote gorgeously of the wonders beyond the irrepassable gate, but others told of horror and disappointment. I knew not which to believe, yet longed more and more to cross forever into the unknown land, where doubt and secrecy are the lure of lures, and no new horror can be more terrible than the daily torture of the commonplace. So when I learned of the drug which would unlock the gate and drive me through, I resolved to
How's your
take
night
it
going,
the
Mix?
next I awaked. Last night I swallowed the drug and floated dreamily into the golden valley and the shadowy groves. And when I came this time to the antique wall, I saw that the small gate of bronze was ajar. From beyond came a glow that weirdly lit the giant twisted trees and the tops of the buried temples, and I drifted on songfully, expectant of the glories of the land from whence I should never return. But as the gate swung wider and the sorcery of the drug and the dream pushed me through, I knew that all sights and glories were at an end, for that new realm was neither land nor sea, but only the white void of unpeopled and illimitable space. So, happier than I had ever dared hope to be, I dissolved again into that native infinity of crystal oblivion from which the daemon life had called me for one brief and desolate hour.
Hell yeah, Mix.
This is the end of Ex Oblivione by H.
That's pretty much what I'm doing too.
Lovecraft.
Probably get on some gaming later. Just don't know what game just yet. But
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Victoria Horseman.
but more than likely, I'm probably
Facts
gonna
concerning the late Arthur German and his
be on some
family
Diablo.
by H.P. Lovecraft. Part 1. Life is a hideous thing, and from the background behind what we know of it, peer demoniacal hints of truth, which make it sometimes 1,000-fold more hideous. Science, already oppressive with its shocking revelations, will perhaps be the ultimate exterminator of our human species, if separate species we be. For its reserve of unguessed horrors could never be borne by mortal brains if loosed upon the world. If we knew what we are, we should do as Sir Arthur German did. And Arthur German soaked himself in oil and set fire to his clothing. No one placed the charred fragments in an urn or set a memorial to him who had been. For certain papers and a certain box object were found, which made men wish to forget. Some people do not admit that he ever existed. Arthur German went out on the moor and burned himself. After seeing the boxed object which had come from Africa, was this object, and not his peculiar personal appearance, which made him end his life. Many would have disliked to live if possessed of the peculiar features of Arthur German, but he had been a poet and a scholar, and had not minded. Learning was in his blood, for his great-grandfather, Sir Robert German Baronet, had been an anthropologist of note, whilst his great-great-great-grandfather, Sir Wade German, was one of the earliest explorers of the Congo region, and had written eruditely of its tribes, animals, and supposed antiquities. Indeed, old Sir Wade had possessed an intellectual zeal amounting almost to a mania. His bizarre conjectures on a prehistoric white Congolese civilization earning him much ridicule when his book, Observations on the Several Parts of Africa, was published. In 1765, this fearless explorer had been placed in a madhouse at Huntingdon. Madness was in all the Germans, and people were glad there were not many of them. The line put forth no branches, and Arthur was the last of it. If he had not been, one cannot say what he would have done when the object came. The Germans never seemed to look quite right. Something was amiss, though Arthur was the worst. And the old family portraits in German House showed fine faces enough.
Hey, the goddess, how you doing?
Certainly,
Thanks for
the
stopping
madness
by.
with Sir Wade, whose wild stories of Africa were at once the delight and terror of his few friends. It
Yeah, the
showed
goddess, I'm at my
collection of
mom's and aunt's
trophies
house right now,
and
house sitting and dog sitting.
such as a normal man would accumulate and preserve, and appeared strikingly in the oriental seclusion in which he kept his wife. The latter, he had said, was the daughter of a trader whom he met in She, with an infant son born in Africa, had accompanied him back from the
Hey, Anthony, how you doing?
trips
Thanks for stopping by.
with him on the bird and last never returned. No one had ever seen her closely, not even the servants, for her disposition had been violent and singular. During her brief stay at German House, she occupied a room.
I hope everyone's doing good this
was waited on
this
by
Friday
her
evening.
husband alone. Sir Wade was indeed most peculiar in his solicitude for
I would say night, but
For when
it's
he
barely
returned
gonna
to
be
Africa, he would permit no one to
6:40 and it's still daylight outside.
save a loathsome black woman from Guinea. Upon coming back, after the death of Lady German, he himself assumed complete care of the boy. But it was the talk of Sir Wade, especially when in his cups, which chiefly led his friends to deem him mad. In a rational age like the 18th century, it was unwise for a man of learning to talk about sights and strange scenes under a concrete roof, of the gigantic walls and pillars of a forgotten city crumbling in vine grove, and of dim, silent stone steps.
Hey, low key, how you doing? Thanks for stopping by.
Of abysmal treasure vaults and inconceivable catacombs.
And that GoFundMe that's pinned to the top is
To
to help me get new glasses because
raise such a
I can't hardly see shit.
half of the jungle and half of the enviously aged city. Fabulous creatures which even a plane
So any donations would be definitely appreciated.
might have sprung up after the great apes had overrun the dying city with the walls and the pillars, the vaults and the weird carvings. Yet, after he came home for the last time, Sir Wade would speak of such matters with a shudderingly uncanny zest, mostly after his third glass of the Knight's Head, boasting of what he had found in the jungle and of how he had dwelt among terrible ruins known only to him. And finally, he had spoken of the living things in such a manner that he was taken to the madhouse. He had shown little regret when shut into the bar room at Huntingdon, but his mind moved curiously.
Yeah, I know, Anthony, but unfortunately, in the town I'm at, they no longer get the eye doctor there at Walmart. I could get my glasses there, which would be a lot cheaper, but they no longer get a eye doctor. And the shop I worked at, that I was working at to get extra money, is it shut its doors, so I no longer have that job.
Wade German's son, Philip, was a
Oh, trust me, if I was able to get to that eye doctor, it would be a lot cheaper than going where I have to go.
Appearance and conduct were, in many particulars, so coarse that he was universally shunned. Though he did not inherit the madness which was feared by some, he was intensely stupid and given to brief periods of uncontrollable violence. In frame, he was small but intensely powerful, and was of incredible agility. 12 years after succeeding to his title, he married the daughter of his gamekeeper, a person said to be of gypsy extraction.
Yeah, that
For his son,
it'd be nice if we had that here, or if we even had a
common sailor,
Lynn's Crafters that was close, because
disgust with
that would probably be a lot cheaper, and I'd get my glasses a lot sooner.
After the close of the American War, he was heard of as a sailor on a merchantman in the African trade, having a kind of reputation for feats of strength and climbing, but finally disappearing one night as his ship lay on.
But thankfully, the one here, it doesn't have the doctor no more, but
The son of Sir
if I had my script, I could go there and order my glasses or my contacts from them, and it'd be a lot cheaper than the eye doctors,
with a sort of weird Eastern grace.
because you can still order glasses and contacts from them. They just don't have a doctor there no more.
As a scholar and investigator, it was he who first studied scientifically the vast collection of relics which his mad grandfather had brought from Africa, and who made the family name as celebrated in ethnology as an exploration. In 1815, Sir Robert married a daughter of the 7th Viscount Brightholme, and was subsequently blessed with 3 children, the eldest and youngest of whom were never publicly seen on account of deformities in mind and body. Saddened by these family misfortunes, the scientists sought relief in work and made 2 long expeditions in the interior of Africa. In 1849, his second son, Neville, was a singularly repellent person who seemed to combine the surliness of Philip German with
'Cause I want to
of the
try to get enough
ran away with a
from the donation to get at least,
was pardoned upon his return
uh,
the following year.
see, they don't have a deal of like, so I could get 2 sets for a decent price. That way I have my main set, and then I'll have a backup set if, just in case, like what happened with my glasses now, since they got broken, I would have a backup set. That way this doesn't happen again.
Merely a bit of African folklore which caused the disaster.
Because on my
Have been collecting legends of the Ongad tribes.
on my last glasses that I had, because I got I'll go for the cheapest frame, but just the lenses for my last ones was almost $300, and that was like about 3-4 years ago. My eyesight's gotten a lot worse since then, so it's gonna be a little bit more. Unfortunately, the blinder you are, the more you got to pay for some reason, which kind of sucks.
With a manuscript of notes collected among the Ongals, believing that certain legends of a great city of white apes.
Because I could get my old job back at the tattoo shop I used to work at, because I've asked them and they said pretty much yeah, but I can't go do the work I need to do over there and not being able to see. Because there, I did everything, but the only things I didn't do was I didn't tattoo no one and I didn't pierce anyone. I just cleaned equipment, helped set up appointments, took people's money, made sure everything was clean, make sure the tattoo artist and the piercer didn't need anything.
Neville German died in the successful.
And to be able to do that, I actually got to be able to see. Might be a little bit hard on my back, but it'll be all right because it'll be some cash.
A stubborn refusal to utter an articulate sound, died of apoplexy in the second year of his confinement.
Yeah, because without my glasses, it's about how close I got to be able to read anything on here.
Before his 4th birthday, but his tastes never matched his title. At 20, he had joined a band of music hall performers, and at 36 had deserted his wife and child to travel with an itinerant American circus. His end was very revolting. Among the animals in the exhibition with which he traveled was a huge bull gorilla of lighter color than average, a surprisingly tractable beast of much popularity with performers. With this gorilla, Alfred German was singularly fascinated, and on many occasions the two would eye each other for long periods through the intervening bars. Eventually, German asked and obtained permission to train the animal,
trusting to luck for his footing. 3 more times he climbed, each time gaining 1 story. The slightly sloping tiled roofs ran some distance at that level, and there was a breeze at that height, prickling the hair on the back of his neck with its chill, and almost making him think he was being followed. Stop that.
Give me 1 second,
We're
everyone.
3 streets away by now, looking for somebody else with a fat purse. Bad luck to them. His boots slipped on the tiles, and he decided it might be a good idea to think about getting back down into the street itself. Cautiously, he moved to the edge of the roof and peered down. An empty street lay a good 40 feet or more below him, with 3 taverns and an inn spilling light and music under the cobblestones. But off to his right was a stone bridge running from the top floor of his building to one on the other side. The bridge looked awfully narrow, running through darkness untouched by the tavern lights, arcing over a long fall to hard cobblestones. But he tossed the quarterstaff down and made himself follow before he could think about it too much. His boots thumped onto the bridge, and he let himself roll the way he had as a boy falling out of a tree. He fetched up against the waist-high railing. Bad habits pay off in the long run, he told himself, as he got to his feet and picked up the staff. The window at the other end of the bridge was tightly shuttered and lightless. He did not think whoever lived in there would appreciate a stranger appearing in the middle of the night. He could see lots of stonework, but if there was as much as a finger hold in the reach of the bridge, the light hid it. Well, stranger, no stranger, inside I go. He turned from the railing and suddenly became aware of a man sharing the bridge with him. A man with a dagger in his hand. Matt grabbed at the hand as the knife darted toward his throat. He barely caught the fellow's wrist with his fingers, and then the quarterstaff between them tangled itself in his legs, tripping him to fall back against the railing, to fall half over it, pulling the other man on top of him. Balanced there on the small of his back, teetering with his assailant's bared teeth in his face, he was as aware of the long drop under his head as he was of the blade catching faint moonlight as it edged toward his throat. His finger grip on the man's wrist was slipping, and his other hand was caught with the quarterstaff between their bodies. Only seconds had passed since he first saw the man, and in seconds more, he was going to die with a knife in his throat. "Time to toss the dice," he said. He thought the other man looked confused for an instant, but an instant was all he had. With a heave of his legs, Matt flipped them both off into the empty air. For a stretched out moment, he seemed to have no weight. Air whistled past his ears and ruffled his hair. He thought he heard the other man say, and made silver black flecks vision. When he could breathe again and see, he realized he was lying on top of the man who had attacked him.
Give me 1 second, everyone.
He whispered. Slowly, he climbed to his feet, cursing the bruise the quarterstaff had put across his ribs. He expected the other man to be dead. Not many could survive a 30-foot fall to cobblestones with another's weight on top of him. But what he had not expected was to see the fellow's dagger driven to the hilt into his own heart. Such an ordinary-looking man to have tried to kill him. Matt did not think he would even have noticed him in a crowded room. "You had bad luck, fellow," he told the corpse shakily. Suddenly, everything that had happened rushed back in on him. The footpads in the twisting street, the scramble over the rooftops, this fellow, the fall. His eyes rose to the bridge overhead, the bit of trembling in him. They must have been crazy. A little adventure is one thing, but Rogosh Eagle-Eye wouldn't ask for this. He realized he was standing over a dead man with a dagger in his chest, just waiting for someone to come along and run shouting for city guards with flame of Tarvalin on their chests. The Amulet's paper might get him away from them, but maybe not before she found out. He could still end up back in the White Tower without that paper, and possibly not even allowed outside the tower grounds. He knew he should be on his way to the docks right then, and on the first vessel sailing, it was a rotten tub full of old fish. But his knees were shaking hard enough in reaction that he could hardly walk. And what he wanted was to sit down for just a minute. Just a minute, to steady his knees. And then he was headed for the docks. The taverns were closer, but he started toward the inn. The common room of an inn was a friendly place where a man could rest a minute and not worry about who might be sneaking up behind him. Enough light came out through the windows for him to make out the sign. A woman with her hair in braids, holding what he thought was an olive branch, and the words, "The Woman of Tanchico." Chapter 31. The Woman of Tanchico. The common room of the inn was brightly lit, the tables not near a quarter full so late. A few white-aproned serving women with mugs of ale or wine passed among the men, and a low murmur of talk ran under the sound of a harp being strummed and plucked. The patrons, some with pipes clenched in their teeth, and one pair hunched over a stone board, had the look of ship's officers and minor merchants from the smaller houses, their coats well cut and of fine wool, but with none of the gold or silver or embroidery that richer men might have had. And for once, there was no clack and rattle of dice to be heard. Fires blazed on the long hearths at the ends of the room, but even without those, there would have been a warm feeling about the place. The harper stood on a tabletop, reciting Mara and the Three Foolish Kings to the music of his harp. His instrument, all worked in gold and silver, was fit for a palace. Matt knew it. He had saved Matt's life once. The harper was a lean man who would have been tall except for a stoop, and he moved with a limp when he he shifted his foot on the tabletop. Even here inside, he wore his cloak, all covered with fluttering patches in 100 colors. He always wanted everyone to know he was a gleaner. His long mustaches and bushy eyebrows were as snow white as the thick hair on his head, and his blue eyes held a look of sorrow as he recited. The look was as unexpected as the man. Matt had never known Tom Maryland to be a sorrowful man. He took the table, setting his things on the floor by his stool, and ordered 2 mugs. The pretty young serving girl's big brown eyes twinkled at him. "True, young master. You do not look such a hard-drinking man as that." Her voice held a mischievous edge of laughter. After rummaging,
Okay, I'm back
he
here
brought
now.
out 2 silver pennies from his pocket. One more than paid for the wine, but he
You just had to go out there and feed the chickens.
will be joining me. He knew Tom had seen him. The old gleeman had nearly stopped the story dead when Matt came in.
And I give it here in a little bit. Let it cool down a little bit more. And then I gotta go. Excuse me. Whatchamacallit, collect eggs.
It was as we have said it should be, said King Beetle.
They usually give us, or they used to give my mom and dad about a dozen a day.
Seemed to almost echo inside a great hall, not an ordinary common room. His plucked harp sounded the 3 kings' final foolishness.
It was as we said it would be, announced Horander. And feet slipping in the mud, he sat down with a great splash. It was as we said it must be, proclaimed Kadar, as he surged up to his elbows in the river for his
All right, everyone. I'm probably gonna get off for right now.
She speaks.
Probably go collect the chicken eggs and then make something to eat. I'll probably get on a little bit later on either another live like this. There might be some gameplay more than likely. But thanks to everyone for stopping by and everyone who keeps stopping by, showing love and support. Until next time, everyone. Hobo's come out.